Welcome back to the Acorn Land Lab Overview course. We're actually done with all of the sections pertaining to food, shelter, sanitation, water, energy, and transportation. We're in the final phase of the course talking about next steps, the future vision, and moving forward. How do we take all these individual pieces, ideas, and components together to form a holistic whole? Building blocks. Everything we've discussed is building blocks to off-grid living. Whether it's the methane digester, the solar ovens, permaculture gardens, rotational grazing, rainwater catchment, wells, small EVs, and local car-free pathways for transportation, passive home design. Every one of these ideas is a building block. There are hundreds of building blocks that we cover, that we make reference to give you ideas for how this puzzle comes together. Before we start talking about the large-scale future visions for how all these components come together, let's just kind of recap how these building blocks interlink with some hard and fast examples. My favorite system that we have is the methane digester. Let's start with the methane digester on a small piece of property as a cornerstone for your sustainable systems and off-grid living. If you've got a methane digester, it means you're going to need some manure, preferably cow manure. Either you have your own cow or you're getting manure from a farmer nearby. So you're building those connections, that community. So that cow is ideally being raised on regenerative pasture. That is building up the soil, building up the biomass on that land as the cow is moved from paddock to paddock to paddock, depositing manure. So you use that manure in your methane digester. From the methane digester, you're getting hours of cooking fuel daily at no expense once you set up the system. You're getting gallons of fertilizer weekly and monthly for your garden or going back out to the pasture. That cow is going to provide food in some way, shape, or form, either through milk or through beef. When you as a human digest that food, you're going to end up having more sanitation to deal with in your composting toilet. That's going to go back out to either berry bushes, a grove of trees, bamboo, some biomass source that you're growing. And from that you create biochar, which goes back into the gardens, back into the pastures to create more biomass for more cows to eat. That manure can be used to compost, or it can be used in the methane systems. The methane generating that cooking fuel is how you go about cooking food that you might have derived from that cow. So you can begin to see how these systems have a synergy about them. The difference between centralized systems that are spread out over thousands of miles involving so many supply chains is they're really not synergistic in a sustainable manner at all. These local off-grid systems can all happen within a human scale footprint. They can happen within hundreds of feet. Sometimes you might be a few miles away from the local farmer, but ideally you want all these systems connected within a proximity of just a few hundred or a few thousand feet. So the same applies for other technologies like your passive home. If you've got a small, well-built, energy-efficient home that's pointing southwards, if you're in the northern hemisphere, gathering that passive sunlight during the colder months in the wintertime, you're going to need less solar panels, you're going to need a smaller stove for heating the home, you're going to need less energy inputs, which means you're going to have a smaller air conditioning unit, if any at all. You're going to have a rainwater system that's operating from that home. Then you process the gray water from the rainwater to go to your garden. These are more synergistic links. The more building blocks that follow these off-grid, local, sustainable principles that you implement, the more affordable your life becomes, the less work you're doing in the long run, the more sustainable your environment is. It's all so common sense when you start implementing building block after building block after building block. And it's not easy. There's no silver bullets in these off-grid systems, but it is so much of an improvement to many of the massive top-heavy centralized systems that we're dealing with today. So at the end of the day, the synergy produced by these building blocks is what gives us more freedom. It gives us time outdoors. It gives us more physical activity. It gives us more of a direct purpose outside of manipulating spreadsheets or working on arcane corporate tasks. All of these building blocks come together to build a rich tapestry of life. And it's not a lifestyle that every last person wants. I understand that. Our team understands that. We're not trying to impose this lifestyle on other people. Far be it from us. We are trying to share these ideas, share these building blocks, because we know these building blocks in this lifestyle will resonate with so many people. Not everybody, but so many people. People want to go back to a more local, traditional way of living. People want more of their time back. People want less time commuting on freeways. How do we go about doing that? The government's not going to solve that problem. Big corporations aren't going to solve that problem. You've got to start implementing these little projects piece by piece and perhaps eventually move somewhere where you can do this with more freedom. You reinvent this world in your own backyard. That's the beauty of this grassroots approach with these building blocks. All right, I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. We're winding down the course. It's been fabulous having you along for the ride. We still have a few more videos to go, but I'm just excited that you've stuck with us this far, and I really hope that you can glean and pick up so many ideas to take back to implement for your own off-grid or sustainable environment. Today we're going to be talking about building soil and biodiversity by living well. Some of the best things we humans can do for the natural environment, beyond not polluting and not poisoning things and cutting things down, is building soil back and building biodiversity back. For the past few hundred years, we have been destroying species of animals, species of plants, species of fish, mushrooms, birds. We have been decimating biodiversity at an ever-increasing rate over the last few hundred years as humanity's population has exploded. And it's not because our population's exploded, it's the way that we've treated the world as we've grown. I believe this world can hold billions of people sustainably if we lived differently. If we lived locally, if we lived in a slow culture, if we grew our food and harnessed our energy locally, I believe this world has the capacity for so many people. I don't adhere to the overpopulation concept, frankly, but the way that we're living now, with the resource extraction, with the clear cutting, with the burning, with the bulldozing of new farmland into the jungles and the chemical farming we use today, we are destroying so much value around us. Millions of tons of topsoil are eroded from our farmlands, and all the different species that create the interconnected web that's so intricate and amazing are continually being lost with the way that we currently live. So our pitch with the Acorn Land Lab concept, with the Acorn Home concept, is why don't we live differently to make our own lives that much easier and more simplistic and healthy? What if by living well, what if by living in connection with nature, what if by living locally, we were more sustainable as a byproduct? One thing we've discovered is many people, they don't perk up their ears when you say, hey, let's live sustainably. People think that means you're giving up a lot. They think that means you're going to live like a caveman. You're going to live an uncomfortable life. But we have not found that to be the case at all. In fact, we've found that the more sustainably we live with these clever systems and solutions, the slower our lives are, the more peace and tranquility you can find in the gardens. There's so much beauty to be had when you slow down, live locally, and leverage these renewable, sustainable systems. Life is a higher quality when we're not driving up and down the freeway, eating fast food, continually stuck on our phone. The corporate powers of fast food and social media, big technology, all these big retailers, their bottom line is profit. And study after study after study have shown happiness is not found through all that consumption. There is a happier life to be had when you switch gears to production, when you're growing food, when you're gardening, when you're tending to livestock and chickens, when you're building skills, harnessing local energy and rainwater, building your own creative shelter. It makes life an adventure again. Young people today are despondent and depressed because they don't see hope. They don't have a mission. These off-grid systems give people a mission. They give people tactile, tangible things you can do with your hands. And what we've found to be true is that by living in this way, the byproduct of living local and living sustainably, the byproduct of living affordably with these systems is you're building up healthy soil. As you compost, as you use proper sanitation systems, you're building healthy soil inch by inch by inch. As you're planting a diversity of crops, you're planting a polyculture, you're improving biodiversity. If you go treat your lawn with chemicals and Roundup and mow, you're destroying biodiversity. When you plant wildflowers and compost, you're increasing biodiversity. When you garden organically and locally and compost, you're building soil. When you go buy industrial ag food products at the store, you are paying for and supporting the destruction of soil in mega farms. So we think that this way of living The way that it appeals to people first is it is affordable. It is way more affordable than the modern way that we're living. The modern suburban model is breaking and cracking, and it's apparent for everyone to see. Young folks can't afford these homes. And frankly, if I were a young person looking at buying my first home, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't want to buy one. They're a trap. It's a financial trap. It's a energy and utility bill trap. It is locking you into working in a corporatized world that you probably don't want to be a part of. So let's talk about the benefits of living well and building soil and biodiversity as a byproduct of living simply and living off-grid. Local living. When you can live in harmony with local ecosystems and resources, you feel connected to nature because you are connected to nature. We are part of nature and we have a vital role to play. Over the last 120 years, we have extracted ourselves thinking that somehow we are above or beside nature when we are part of it. Sustainable practices allow us to not be depleting these resources that harm ecosystems, and it gives us as humans long-term viability. A holistic lifestyle might sound hippy-dippy, but holistic simply means you're looking at the whole. That's what we do at Acorn Land Labs. We look at the whole. Where's my energy coming from? Where's my food coming from? How am I building soil? Am I producing toxic byproducts? Do I need transportation if I'm producing more of these things locally? How does the big picture fit together? The last few decades, the last 100 or so years, Western thought is a parts-oriented perspective. There is not enough view of the whole. We look at fragmented pieces, industrial mega farm there, coal power plant here, scattered roads and parking. We're not looking at systems through the lens of what's healthy for humans and healthy for community. We've fragmented all this out. When you fragment vital components, gatekeepers and middlemen crop up to charge you to move from one to the other. Energy companies, car companies, agricultural middlemen. These are gatekeepers that are making immense profits because these systems have been disconnected. When these systems should be unified at a local level, when they're unified, you know how they work. You can see them. You can operate them. No one is profiting off of gatekeeping and being a middleman when all these systems for food, water, shelter, sanitation are consolidated together. Natural farming. There is so much peace and satisfaction in gardening out there. When you're getting your hands in the soil and smelling that soil, studies have shown soil can act as an antidepressant. I always feel so much better after I've been gardening than when I've been on the computer. These days, I'm trying to minimize my computer use more and more and more and increase how much time I am outdoors gardening with our livestock and building systems. Being active in what your needs are through composting and waste management, building up your energy systems, building your shelter, participating in your food system. Doesn't mean we're going to grow all of our own food. That's not the point. But when you're active, when you're an active participant, you appreciate these things all the more. Enhancing biodiversity, producing food locally, collecting rainwater and learning how to manage your own well, tapping into renewable energy like biomass, biogas, and solar. This type of living makes us tighter as a community. If we've lost something over the last few decades, the most tragic thing we've probably lost as a culture here in North America, and all over the globe, I'm sure to some extent, is community. We've become so individualistic. We work our jobs, we go home, turn on the TV. We don't interact and participate as community like we once did. I believe there is a renaissance happening where people are realizing they need to reconnect, but it is something that we need to move along faster. Affordability through simplicity. When you are living a lifestyle that is more simple and local, it is going to be more affordable and you're going to have more time on your hands. Reduced financial stress. Old people, middle-aged people, young people, everyone feels the financial burdens of our current systems. Our aging infrastructure, our expensive car-centric infrastructure, our increasingly expensive fossil fuel food production system. Reduced financial stress is a wonderful thing for quality of life. Building self-sufficiency skills, building resiliency, and finally, building a legacy for future generations. I wish my preceding generations had started these projects decades ago, so I could have grown up with these projects. The next best thing I can do is be the one to help spearhead this lifestyle for my children. I don't want my children to have to go buy an expensive car, to drive into the city and work in a cubicle, come back home through deadly traffic on the freeway, breathing more polluted air, buying industrial toxic foods from the grocery store. I want my children to have a blueprint for a whole different way of living. That's part of the passion that drives me. I want the young people today to know that our generation worked to hammer out a blueprint to show them there was a better way, a slower way, a more affordable way, a more sustainable way, a way that is better for humans and community. All right, your next steps. Read the Acorn Home vision. I'm putting that article link down below. You might have already read that article earlier in the course. If you haven't, give it a read. That articulates our vision for what home should look like. Follow our Off-Grid October series. We're recording this course in September and August of 2023. We're about to start recording our Off-Grid October build. We're building a micro cabin on 7 acres by a river. And we think it's going to be a pretty cool series for you to follow along with. By the time you watch this course, chances are we'll already be publishing the first videos and components of that Off-Grid October course. Once that's published, we'll put a link in the description below. So stay tuned for the Off-Grid October series. Explore the Land Lab Simulator. We'll be releasing the beta version of that this October as well. The Land Lab Simulator allows you to drag and drop all these systems to see how you could build your own off-grid environment, your own Acorn Home or Acorn style lab. Begin making your plans. How many people would you want to live in your off-grid environment? What kind of food would you grow? What kind of livestock would you have? Are you into the tiny homes or the yurts or the A-frames? What is your style? What is your vibe? That's the beauty of off-grid. Each one of us humans is so different and unique, and we can make our homes different and unique. There's no reason we should all have the same industrial cookie cutter suburban home. Build your community. Find like minds to work with. I've learned from personal experience, when you try to go it alone, the path is slow and you don't make progress. Well, you don't make progress very fast. It's fine if you're learning about all this by yourself for now, but I challenge you to find one person to bond with over these ideas. Then find 2, then 3, then 4. At this point in my life, I have dozens of people who are passionate about these systems and are learning more and more and more because they see the value. When you can build a community around you, you can make things happen fast. And you start attracting more attention and more people jump on the bandwagon to make a change. So I challenge you to build your community around these ideas. Today we're talking about community. Community truly is key. We humans are built to be social creatures. We are meant to work in community. We're meant to live in community. We are not meant to be solo. When people are in solitary confinement, people that have been left on desert islands, people that have been trapped alone, people often go insane. We are not meant to be alone. We get depressed. We have anxiety. We go into dark places. We go into depression when we are isolated. That might be one of the biggest problems in modern humanity, in our modern world. So many millions, if not billions of people feel alone. They feel isolated, they feel cut off from nature, cut off from each other. And what's tragic is much of the big corporate world profits off of sickness, off of isolation, off of lack of community. Why are VR headsets being developed and sold? To give people an escape from a dreary world. Why do people market alcohol and junk food as a release? To give people an escape at the end of a day that might have been long and depressing. Why do people bond with characters on TV shows in the evening? Because it's lower risk than making real relationships and real community. There is so much rebuilding to do to establish community. Off-grid living and off-grid freedom, it's not just about technology. Methane digesters are great. Solar panels are great. Solar ovens are cool. Permaculture gardens are wonderful. All this is good and well, but if you're doing all this without community, you'll still be very poor in terms of your quality of life. It's not a bad thing to be an introvert. I'm an introvert and I love my quiet time. But the seasons of life where I have had the most depression have been the seasons where I've been isolated and cut off. Often just working on my computer, working by myself, working remote, with no community. My wife and I moved away about an hour away from the town we grew up in, and that's when I had the hardest time, working remote in my home by myself. When we moved back here, that depression vanished because I would walk up to our downtown. I would go to our coffee shop. I would go to the local restaurants where I knew the people that owned them, the people that worked in them. I saw dozens of people that I'd grown up with, people that I knew and cared for, and the depression vanished like a mist with the sun coming out when I was plugged back into my community. So I can't overstate this enough. If you're wanting to live in more contact with the natural world, if you're wanting to go off grid for affordability purposes, independence purposes, sustainability purposes and goals. You want to do it with a community. Here at the Acorn Land Labs, it is not just one person making all this happen. You see Joe in our social media videos. Joe presents these ideas with engaging passion. Ben is behind the camera filming things. We've got Joachim in the garden working on planting and harvesting and composting. I'm sketching out ideas and building blueprints and plans for how we're going to plug this system into that system. I'm working with our engineering team. They're building out the Land Lab simulator. We've got volunteers. We've got talented people that have come together as a community to make this Acorn Land Lab project a reality. And that's not even to mention the folks that believe in us and have helped give us the tools, the encouragement to be able to make this happen. And I need to mention my family and the families of our team. Behind all these team members are kiddos, their spouses that have encouragement, they pitch in with gardening projects. It truly takes dozens of people to make all this happen. And it will be no different for your own projects. You'll move very slowly if you try to go it alone. But if you build community, find a friend who's into off-grid living and wanting to do what you're doing locally. Find someone who's already done it. Find a young person that you can talk with and encourage and mentor if they're wanting to move on this journey of gardening, composting, living off-grid. Community truly is the cornerstone of off-grid living. Community is the cornerstone of on-grid living. Off-grid is not the answer to all of life's problems, not for a minute. I don't want to make it seem like that. But we believe there are so many benefits to local, slow, off-grid living and community. You have more time for community in that context. We believe that there's just less cost, less disconnection when you're living locally and living off-grid. When you're building your community, you're able to use and leverage the skills of all these individuals around you, and they get a benefit from your skills. I'm not as good of a gardener as Joachim is. I'm not as good of a photographer as Ben and Joe are. I am really good at planning software, and I'm good at communicating ideas and connecting systems and building partnerships. So I've got my skills. Everyone else has their skills, and it comes together in a powerful way. Having a network of skilled individuals so you can pool your knowledge, pool your expertise, and pool your resources is invaluable. Having multiple talents and abilities within the community. I can't raise every vegetable and every type of livestock. My wife knows way more about chickens than I do. My friend Scott knows a lot more about raising cattle. My friend Justin is a very talented metal worker. You can't do it all, so don't try to do it all. It's okay to be a jack of all trades. I certainly am a jack of many trades, master of none to some extent. But if you have a community, you will have your livestock guru, your farming guru, your metalworking guru, your carpenter, your plumber, your electrician. Rebuilding community is key. I've actually got an article about that. I'll link it below in the description. Having a community with shared values is critical. In our community, many of the shared values come down to faith, friendship, family, finances. In our community, we value time with family. We value teaching our kiddos. Many of us like to homeschool because of the flexibility. We value our faith. We value these shared values as a community. Mutual support. Over the weeks, my wife will take care of various projects for other friends and family, and they'll help us with projects. That mutual support goes such a long way. Living near family is a beautiful thing, especially for off-grid projects. Collaborative projects. The A-frame chicken coop you might have seen in some of our videos, that was built with friends and family. The micro cabin will be built with friends and family. The tiny house, built with friends and family. The Amish are really good about coming together as a group to build things and giving of their time and resources. It's high time we ditch the idea we always have to get paid for these type of projects, because then the government just benefits when we're getting taxed and taxed and taxed. When you've got a community, you're coming together to build things together because you care about each other. And that's a direction we need to move more so in. Learning and education, sharing knowledge and learning from one another, offering continuous growth and development. That's key for building a community for these garden projects, livestock projects, clean energy projects, all these off-grid projects. Resource sharing. It's very expensive if you have to buy every last one of your tools, but being able to share tools, equipment, materials, that goes a long way in building these types of communities. It minimizes individual costs and maximizes efficiency. Now that said, we have to take care of each other's stuff. You know, we've got tillers and chainsaws, but We share those materials as we work on these projects. Economies of scale. We've talked about this with buying land wholesale. When you purchase in bulk, when you form a co-op, you can form a co-op of friends and family for purchasing land, purchasing grain, building a garden. There is power in community. It reduces costs for essential resources. Shared infrastructure. If you're building numerous off-grid homes on one big property that you've subdivided, you can go in together on the cost of sinking a well or two, the cost of group solar or a combined heat and power generator like the one from All Power Labs. You can go in together on the gravel roads and a community building. Social connection. Building close-knit relationships and friendships fosters belonging and emotional well-being. Modern life has cut us off from each other, and it's time we re-heal those connections. Cultural exchange, being able to visit other communities in other cultures to see how they function and what they do. Differences are a beautiful thing. The last 100 years, we've seen the oranging of America. Every exit, every restaurant, every road, every big box store location in the suburbs, they all look the same. Everything is becoming more homogeneous and more cookie cutter. That's a tragic loss. We're supposed to have diverse and unique communities. I want to be able to travel to the Pacific Northwest and see vernacular architecture and see local solutions, local cuisines. Just like folks up there might want to come down to the South and see how do we build our homes to best fit this environment versus New England or the desert. We shouldn't be building the same home designs, the same fast food restaurants, the same everything all over the place. That's homogenous, that's corporatized. There's no soul, there's no community. People are realizing we need to get rid of that. We need to go back to having unique communities. Having a community is a great way of reducing stress because you've got shared responsibilities and you're able to work as a team. What we're seeing with the homesteading movement and the off-grid movement, it's a new pioneering movement. People are coming back together to work on these solutions jointly. There's economic freedom in community. My younger brother-in-law is going to be getting his diesel mechanic certification, and he wants his own home one day. Chances are he'll build his first tiny home or little cabin on our property or another family member's property. He doesn't need to go spend a fortune on rent because he's going to use his community to build his first little place that he owns, very likely. And other young folks we know will probably do the same thing. Why should they have to go spend $1,000, $2,000 a month renting an apartment when they can leverage community? Long-term resilience. When you build a community, you're building stability and resilience. A community is a support network in times of crisis. We are heading for harder times. The 2020s have already shown us we're kicking off into some harder times. And there'll be another boom time in decades to come. There'll be another golden age. But right now, into the years we're heading into, there's a lot of instability. There's going to be a lot more crisis globally. There will be more issues in big urban areas. There will be rising prices, rising inflation, more financial stress. Crime rates are increasing. We're headed for rockier times. Community gives you a support network in times of crisis. Being a lone wolf survivalist is not something I'd recommend. I don't recommend building a bunker and buying a bunch of MREs and freeze-dried food. That's not how you prepare for crisis. The way you prepare is building a strong community wherever you are, teaching that community skills, and building strong bonds of trust and fellowship. And more than anything, building community gives you a fulfilling life and allows you to have a legacy of continuity. One of the best gifts you can give those around you and your kids is strong relationships. Like I said, the technology for off-grid living is a huge part of what we focus on at Acorn Land Labs, but community might be the most important thing you can build. All right, so your next steps. Who would be in your community? Who would you trust? Who do you want to pour into and invest? Read the article I've got down here about rebuilding community. Do you have a guy or a gal? Do you have a friend that's doing chickens or beehives or raw milk? Do you have a carpenter friend, an electrician friend? Do you have a metalworking friend? Who are your skilled and talented community members, and what skills do you bring to the table? What are the key roles to fill in your local network and local community? Those are opportunity points. I've got a friend who's able to run heavy equipment, bobcats and bulldozers. That comes in handy when you want to make a pond or clear a path or a trail. I've got friends that are great in photography, graphics, gardening, farming, livestock. You want to build that community out so it's vibrant. What skills do you want to build? How are you going to bless others with your skills and talents in the community? It's all well and good to have digital skills. I like building software, but it's very rare that people in my community need software. People come to me asking questions about gardening or setting up chickens or working on a livestock system. And I'm still a novice in many of these areas myself, continuing to learn as I go. We're coming down to the final two sections in this overview. So we want to talk today about our book list. I love books, and I read a great many books, whether they're hard copy or various audiobooks. So there are about 40 to 50 authors that have had a profound impact on all the work that we've been synthesizing and bringing together for the Acorn Land Lab project. These authors include farmers, economists, ecologists, politicians, inventors, technologists. There are so many viewpoints that we're trying to collect and synthesize to guide the practical steps that we need to follow to build more resilient communities and build more local infrastructure and local living. So I'm going to link to that overall book list in the description below the video, but I wanted to just kind of walk through some of these authors, and we'll put their images up on the screen as I describe, who is tackling what and where we get these big ideas that we connect and synthesize for the videos you've seen from Acorn Land Labs and the overall framework that we're operating within. So David Holmgren is a permaculture expert from Australia. His book Retro Suburbia is one of my favorites for practical things you can do in the suburbs to build more off-grid sustainable resilience. David Holmgren and Bill Mollison worked together to form the permaculture concept, which is now being carried by hundreds of other authors and figures. Joel Salatin promotes many permaculture concepts. Paul Wheaton does. We'll dive into more permaculture folks as we move forward. But David Holmgren is at the top of my list in terms of just permaculture voices. Joel Salatin is actually the individual that got me into this world of regenerative ag, renewable energy. It was his book, Folks, This Ain't Normal, that really opened up this rabbit hole for me. Joel is arguably the world's most famous farmer. I've had the pleasure of meeting him briefly up at Polyface Farms. Joel has so many good books. The Pigness of Pigs, Folks, This Ain't Normal, Everything I Do Is Illegal. I really encourage you to read Joel Salatin's work. He is a wealth of information and solid ideas around sustainable living, ethical, natural food systems, rotational grazing. Joel truly is a national treasure, just for common sense. Ryan Avent, he is a writer at The Economist, and his book, The Wealth of Humans, really informed my thinking around automation and humans getting back to working with our hands more as a safeguard for more and more white-collar work being automated and corporations being able to move capital and factories at the drop of a hat globally. When people depend on factory work exclusively, it can be devastating when the factory is moved from their town. If people are providing their own needs directly, there's always an opportunity to work for what you need if you have the training and the systems to grow the food, capture the water, harness the energy. So Ryan Avent's book, The Wealth of Humans, was really eye-opening, just seeing where global commerce, the global economy is headed, and how people can safeguard against falling into economic hardship as global capital is moved around. Charles C. Mann is a writer whose book, The Wizard and the Prophet, is one of my favorites. He talks about the concept of prophets who are more agrarian-minded, focused on the limits of Earth and adhering to those limits. And then he talks about wizards who are very technological in nature, think Silicon Valley types that want to terraform Mars and blast off into space. I definitely fall more in the prophet category with a little light smattering of technology here at the Acorn Land Lab. So the book, The Wizard and the Prophet, does a great job illustrating the two dichotomies, the two competing thought processes for how humanity should thrive. More technological infrastructure built on top of existing technological infrastructure, which frankly is failing many of us, versus going back to a more agrarian, organic way of living, which is not perfect either. I think you need a hybrid of both. But Charles C. Mann's work in The Wizard and the Prophet is phenomenal at looking at both of those dichotomies. Francis Schaeffer, a religious philosopher. I really like Francis Schaeffer's work in How Should We Practically Live? A lot of what we do here at Acorn Land Labs is taking up that mantle, taking up that question. How then shall we live? How do we live ethically in the physical world? Many religious scholars talk a ton about the spiritual world, but how do we live ethically in the physical world? What does that look like? What does it look like to be good stewards of our soil, of our food systems, of our energy systems, of our housing systems? We are really trying to find answers to those questions. Ted Trainer, an Australian advocate for simple living. Ted Trainer has some very philosophical videos that we enjoy talking about the simple way and the simple life. Katharine Hayhoe is a Christian climate scientist whose work I really respect. She does a great job communicating to the Christian base why caring about our earth, our climate, our environment are critical to being good stewards. Martin Ford is a tech and automation author writing on robots and AI. He has a lot of work talking about what happens when corporations automate away most of their jobs. When workers don't have an income, they can't buy products from corporations. His book, Lights in the Tunnel, is fantastic. That's a question we should all be asking. Why are we trying to automate absolutely everything? What happens to our economies when the bulk of the work is automated? Are we all going to be on universal basic income? Will companies in the state control every last detail of life? What's the incentive for companies to produce materials if consumers don't have income to buy those materials and products? Kate Rayworth, an economist who's written a lot about circular economies. Her book is called Donut Economics. Highly recommend Donut Economics, talking about circular economies. Daniel Susskind, he is an automation and tech author who wrote a book called A World Without Work, which it's good. You want to read books by organic farmers. You want to read books by technologists. I like to read books with competing views. Peter Zeihan writes a lot about geopolitical analysis. Peter has written extensively about the cycles that we see in history, the rise and fall of various empires and economies. Peter is more than anything a demographer. He is looking at demographics worldwide. The US has a very large young population in the millennials and then a smaller Gen Z population. Most of the rest of the developed world does not have that young population. Many countries like Japan, South Korea, China, Russia, they have cratering populations. That's going to have profound implications the world over. Manufacturing is moving away from China. These countries like Russia and China that have a lack of young people are becoming more aggressive as more threats arise to their economies. It's really worth looking into Peter Zeihan's work because he talks about the global instability that is coming and already here and how that's going to ramp up based on demography and demographics. We're very blessed in the US to have a lot of young people. That's what keeps an economy going. That's what helps to keep stability. In these countries in Europe, Germany, Japan, South Korea, these countries that don't have a strong population of young people, their populations will dwindle. They will become top heavy with more old people to support than young people to run the economies. Traditionally, a country has a pyramid-shaped population base with old people in the smallest cohorts up top and then a very large base at the bottom. That's the traditional population or demographic pyramid for a developing country. Once a country's developed, the population tends to look like this, where older populations and younger populations are fairly equal in size. When a country begins demographic decline, the population can start to look like a V, where there are fewer young people than old people, and that is catastrophic. Young people can't have kids because they're supporting the elderly. The economy begins to slow down and deflationary aspects begin. So I highly recommend Peter Zeihan. Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry, I know, has inspired a lot of Joel Salatin's work. Wendell Berry is a wonderful voice on agrarian lifestyles in the US and the need for more community in small towns, more agrarian living. Mark Bittman is a great author talking about agriculture. His book, Animal Vegetable Junk, is one I highly recommend. Raina Fruhar is an economist, writer, and she writes a lot on economics, but she's got really great work talking about big corporations and the negative impacts in the US of consolidation and outsourcing. Tristan Harris is a fantastic writer talking about big tech. He left the world of big tech after he saw how many unethical things were happening with big tech being optimized to control young people, to control ourselves through captology and all the psychology that goes into notifications and rewards. These are designed to be very addictive, and they are very successful in being addictive. So Tristan Harris has some great work on how we need to distance ourselves from our phones and digital media. Tim Jackson is an economist talking about a post-growth world. Andrew Yang, he wrote a book called The War on Normal People, which I highly recommend. Talks about the issues we're facing with the middle class in America and worldwide. Vaclav Smil, he's got a book, How the World Really Works, which is phenomenal for pragmatists. I could keep going on this list. I'm going to read off some more names, but I'm going to have the full list down below. Kevin Roos, Dan Saladino, Kevin Roos writes on future-proofing your career with more automation. Dan Saladino's book, Eating to Extinction, is phenomenal. Mark Mills is a great author on the realities of our energy transition. Susan Schaefer Macaulay is a fantastic author on education, particularly homeschooling. I've got a few YouTube channels thrown in here as well that have been very beneficial for our work. After School, talking about chemical farming and the other health issues. Kristen Dirksen, she's got a channel on alternative housing and sustainable living, which we highly recommend. Happen Films is a YouTube channel that's got great films on sustainability. Let's see here. Charlotte Mason is an author who wrote extensively about homeschooling. Well, actually not even homeschooling, more so just healthy, common sense childhood education models. Let's see here. Joel Kotkin writes about modern feudalism. More and more people are moving into a feudal lifestyle as corporations and big landowners become rentiers. And that's a very negative place for us to be heading. Jack Doty with the Abundiculture program. Jack Doty and I had our first phone call a few days ago. His Abundiculture work has really inspired our focus on the 5 essentials for humans: food, water, shelter, sanitation, and energy. Noah Sanders is a permaculturalist in Alabama with a big emphasis on faith, family, farming. Love Noah's work. Paul Wheaton is also into permaculture in a big way up in Montana. Sepp Holzer is an Australian farmer whose work we really admire in terms of ponds and water management. Front Porch Republic is a great publication online. I love their book on localism. Let's see, Peter Turchin has great work in his book End Times about the natural cycles and rhythms of rise and decay. There's a phrase, hard times make strong men and women make good times make weak men and women make hard times. We're seeing that play out today. So Peter Turchin's got some great work around that. And that's most of the list, but I'll have the full list down below. It took me 10 years to work through all these books. I'm not expecting anyone to read all of these and drill through them. We're trying to summarize a lot of these ideas into directly actionable practices here at Acorn Land Labs, but I would highly recommend you dive into some of these books. We live in a post-truth society, and I highly value these thinkers who analyze data to give us a clear picture of what's happening and why. So your next steps, check out some of these key authors that have given us our inspiration, and read some of the books on our book list. Explore some of the YouTube channels we recommend. There is so much information out there if you're willing to absorb it. I love to pop in my earbuds while I'm mowing, while I'm gardening, and listen to many of these books while I'm working outdoors. Thank you so much for sticking with us through all these videos. Our goal is to introduce you to these ideas, these concepts around off-grid food, energy, shelter, sanitation, transportation, and water. There's a lot of moving pieces. You don't learn all this overnight, and we're still on our journey, figuring out what works better, what works best, what the best mix of systems is. That's why we're building the Land Lab Simulator, to help educate others and to help teach ourselves more. That's why we built this first video course, and this will be the first of many courses. This is our first course to produce. I'm confident our quality and delivery will only improve from here. We're trying to pack as much of the materials, the concepts, the ideas into this course as possible. We've spent over 10 years pulling together all these ideas, the authors, the off-grid technologies, just to build this vision of the Acorn Land Lab and the Acorn Home concept. Our aim and mission is to give this to you as a shortcut. We want you to be able to make faster progress than we did on this journey. So this final video is about your next steps. And we know that everyone watching this series, this course, is coming from a different perspective. Some of you might be teenagers, some of you might be in your 70s or 80s, and many of you will be in between. Some of you might be month to month with your paycheck, Some of you might have quite a bit of money in the bank for building your system ideas. Some of you might be living in a big, dense city in an apartment. Many of you are probably in the suburbs, and some of you are probably already in a rural area. Some of you might be off-grid experts that know more than we do. And if you are, we want to see your comments on the videos. We want to see you in the community chat. This is a place to share and teach others as well. And many of you might not know anything about off-grid living, and you're at the beginning of your journey. For us and our team, we're pretty much smack in the middle, learning as we go and teaching as we go. So your next steps. We want to cover what your next steps could likely be depending on what stage of life you're in. If you're a teenager, if you're 17, 18, 19, if you're 20 even, or in your 20s at all, really this is any age, but in particular if you're single. If you're single, you've got the opportunity to go learn. You can go learn on organic farms. You can go learn on off-grid facilities. WOOF is a fabulous platform, WWOOF. WOOF allows you to connect with farms and organic sites and off-grid sites you can go volunteer at. That's the best way to plug into this community before you buy your own land. Go work on an organic farm. Go work on an off-grid, eco-village or ecotourism site. Go experience what it's like to live in a canvas tent, a yurt, a tiny house, an A-frame. There are so many people that have already invested the time and the money to build up their zones, and you can go work because they need help. In exchange for your work, you get a free place to stay, you're often fed, and sometimes you even get a small stipend. But if you are younger, in particular, if you're single, I would recommend that hands down. Hop in a car, hop on a plane, find a farm that looks like it matches your values, find one locally, find one far away, find something in between, and go roll up your sleeves and pitch in and work on the job. It's one of the best ways of diving into this world of off-grid living and organic farming. So, and if you can't do that, like I wanted to, but I never did that to any high degree. I was fortunate to go to Polyface Farm where Joel Salatin was for about 10 days because I had a friend who was interning there. But if you're a young adult, learn the basics. If you're watching a course like this, you're ahead of many. Begin researching off-grid living, sustainable practices, and energy-efficient technologies. Build your budget. What type of tiny home or A-frame or yurt do you want to build? Where can you build it? How much money will you need for the down payment to get going? Where can you build it legally as far as zoning goes? So if you're young, soak all this information up like a sponge and keep teaching yourself more. Read the author list that we provided in the previous video. So if you're young, help others, volunteer using WOOF, go, explore and learn to build your own vision for what you could create. And more than anything, stay out of debt and work to save up some money for your first small piece of land or your tiny house. Get creative with friends and family. Rather than go spend $1,000 to $2,000 on an apartment to help boost the profits of some hedge fund or insurance company or property management company, build your first yurt or tent or tiny house on a friend or family member's piece of land after you've communicated your vision to them. That way you can pay them a little bit of rent and save most of your money to build your first debt-free home. Build better habits. Practice minimalism, reduced waste. Start composting. Go ahead and start building these habits. The sooner you stop spending a ton of money on material things, on eating out, on media and entertainment, the sooner you'll have money to buy land and begin your gardening projects, your tiny home projects, your debt-free living, your off-grid projects. So reduce consumption and start making those habits now about composting food waste, maybe get some backyard chickens, plant your first little garden, develop skills. And all of this applies to any age, not just young folks. Learn the basics of gardening. Do you have a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a friend, a neighbor that's into gardening? Help them out. Learn from them. Develop those skills. Advocate for change. Raise awareness about the needs for off-grid living to be legalized in many more, in zoning laws, in metro areas and suburbs. Write letters to your board of commissioners or your city commissioners, your city council. Talk about why you need to legalize tiny homes, why you need more affordable, creative housing options, why you need to legalize gardens and front lawn food forests and HOAs. If you're an adult, you might be working a 9-to-5 job, you might be in the suburbs. That's a very similar position I was in as I was learning about these systems. I didn't have all this knowledge as a teenager. I didn't have that vision of what I wanted to build when I was 18 or 19. I was picking up the first pieces, learning about tiny homes, learning about being debt-free and minimalism, but I didn't have all this wealth of knowledge. If I had all this when I was 19 or 20, I would have been off-grid from the moment I was 20, 21. If you're an adult, plan for the transition. Reduce your expenses, stop eating out, start saving up that money to buy your first piece of land. Buy some plans on tiny home building. Research the yurts. Explore in our Land Lab simulator to see what components are possible. Monitor your electricity usage, your water usage, your resource consumption. How much do you need to live the life you want to live? Prepare financially, reduce those unnecessary expenses. My wife and I haven't gone on an actual vacation in a long time because we're pouring our money into our homestead and our off-grid projects. So skip Disney and save up for that piece of land to build your place of freedom. Build skills, no matter what age you are. Network. Connect with like-minded individuals and join local sustainability groups. It's all about building that community. If you have other people in your community that have land, that are raising chickens, raising off-grid gardens, growing produce, your path is going to move faster by building momentum with people that are doing this. If you're an older adult, evaluate the needs. How's your health and mobility? What kind of off-grid environment is going to be best for you? Are you going to need more proximity to healthcare? Are you wanting to go off in the boondocks in the mountains, or are you wanting to build something off-grid that's more in the suburbs or the peri-urban fringe? And if you're an older adult with resources, use them to help younger people that are wanting to move in this direction. Are you an older adult that already owns land? Let some youngster build a tiny home on your property. Help them if you've got skills in the trades, construction, plumbing. If you own farmland in particular, there's so much you can do to empower younger generations to be stewards of what you've already worked so hard on. So if you're an older person with resources, with land, you can give youngsters a leg up because housing and land is astronomically expensive and out of reach for most youngsters right now. No matter what age you are, plant a garden, get some chickens, consider getting your first little pig or two. Begin small, don't try to do everything at once. There's been no way for my wife and I and our kids to do everything at once. We started years ago by planting our first small patch of carrots in the front yard. And they were ugly and they were scraggly, but we were proud of them because we'd planted them. Then we planted a bigger garden. We'd been working on our tiny house years before that, and it was still unfinished, but we kept working at it. We expanded our garden, and then we got our first chicken coop, and we got our first chickens. And this doesn't happen month after month after month. These take years to develop. But we're a few years in now, and we've got off-grid solar set up, rainwater collection, composting toilets, canvas tent, the tiny house. We've got others working with us. The Acorn Land Lab garden produced over 1,000 pounds of produce last year, and it's on track to produce over 2,500 pounds of produce this year. We purchased our first half cow from a local regenerative farmer. We've got a friend who's got pigs on one of the bigger Acorn Land Labs, so we have local pork. We're raising chickens, we've got rabbits. Before you know it, you've got a lot going on, and you want to find other people to invest in and pour into. The end goal is never a single destination. It's a process. We'll be working on projects for as long as we're living. We'll keep adding more off-grid cabins and micro homes for other people to enjoy. We'll be adding more rainwater systems and wells. I'm excited to get our first solar-powered car when those are available. We'll keep putting tiny homes online for short-term rentals. We'll keep growing gardens. We'll keep teaching people about methane digesters and solar generators. The beauty is so many people can benefit from these ideas, so the work will never stop. We'll always be teaching other people how to do this to increase their freedom, become more sustainable, and become more independent. I'll link to the Acorn Land Lab Home article once again so you can read that vision. We just sincerely thank you from the whole Acorn Land Labs team. Thank you. Thank you for your support for the simulator on Kickstarter. Thank you for supporting this course that we've been producing. We're excited to produce more courses that are more hands-on tutorials with black soldier flies, rainwater collection systems, more building projects. As we get the time and availability and resources, we'll continue making more content, and we'd like to make more and more of this content free. Right now, we're supporting our team, as this is what we do full time, trying to put as much material out as possible. But we just really appreciate all the support we've gotten from so many people all over the globe. It really is amazing watching this movement happen. And it's not our movement, it is the homesteading movement, it's the off-grid movement, it's the sustainability movement, and we're just one small piece of that. We get our raised beds from Australia. We partner with Home Biogas in Israel for the methane digesters. We've got engineers from Tennessee to Ireland working hard on that land lab simulator. We've got volunteers in Iran working on front-end web projects. Our team is here in Georgia. We have people from all 50 states that are messaging and emailing and encouraging. There are people from Spain and South Africa, people from Asia, all chiming in with questions and comments and encouragement. This is an exciting move forward. I think people are pumped about it because it is a set of ideas and building blocks to increase human freedom. The world is deglobalizing. We've been in a period of globalization for the past few hundred years, and now that's kicking into reverse. There will be challenges, but there are also going to be many benefits. Communities need to exert more sovereignty over their own control of their lives. Many people resent the fact that there are people thousands of miles away controlling how they live. With off-grid technology advancing as fast as it is, with all the information around organics and composting, liquid fertilizers, with all of the plans for creative, affordable shelter, we have all the tools we need to live affordable, sustainable, independent, peaceful lives. That should be the goal we all aspire to, and to rebuild community. Thank you for coming along this journey with us. Our team here at Acorn Land Labs is just getting started. We are really excited for what's in store. Check out the Land Lab Simulator. Check out our work with the Off-Grid October video series. And stay tuned for the next course. After you're done with this course, check out the chat room, check out the community rooms in our Acorn Land Lab community. We're trying to build up a group of like minds who are moving the needle, moving the baton forward in developing templates and easy to replicate systems for building your shelter, your food systems, your water systems, your energy systems, your sanitation systems. This is a group effort. This is something that our team is getting out there for people to run with, but the beauty is you're going to build a custom off-grid environment, a sustainable environment that is specifically for you and your family's needs. And we want to hear about what you build. Thank you so much for everything. Can't wait to see you in the next course. And eventually we'll even do some in-person workshops if you're able to come visit. Bye for now. See you in the next one.